Welcome everyone to a special episode of the Elevate podcast. I'm Samantha McLean from Elite Agent, and today for a few very special episodes of the show, which I am super looking forward to, I'm joined by the one and only legend from Wagga, Dave Skow.
G'day. Hey Sam, thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you. So many of you know Dave. He's an industry trainer. He's been on our cover. He's appeared in lots of Elite Agent stuff over the years, like every agent has a story, and he's been a transform coach and more. But to tell you the truth, Dave and I really bonded over our mutual love of reality television, didn't we?
Correct, absolutely.
In particular, Survivor.
Yeah, we're both absolute Survivor tragics.
And you've raised all that money for Luke Toki, which was incredible.
Yeah, that's my claim to fame now forever. I can be as good a real estate practitioner and trainer in the world, but I will never do anything better than that GoFundMe campaign for Luke. Yeah, I'll hang my head on that.
Yeah, very, very well deserved. And of course, we're not really here to talk about Survivor. We're here to talk about another reality television show, which is Luxe Listings Sydney. So you're a big fan of the show, yeah?
Huge fan, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those abilities to be the voyeur in these people that as industry practitioners we know from the articles that we read in Elite Agent and the videos that we see online. So it's nice to get a little behind-the-scenes glimpse.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we did some written recapping of season 1 with Nikki Horner from Canberra at the helm. And you and I have talked, and we thought we'd take it up a notch this year and create a series of podcast episodes. But we're not just going to recap the show, are we? We're going to actually talk about some of the great lessons and things like that that we can pick up from the top agents, because they are the top of their field for a reason, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, and that's exactly right. I think it's more than just an entertainment piece. It's really an opportunity to maybe take a bit of learning from this too, because we're not all agents in the marketplaces that these people that are showcased on Luxe Listings are in, but there's definitely some continuity and some practices that translate into any marketplace, and we're going to really look at those things.
Yeah, and we're going to have a bit of fun, because let's face it, watching Luxe Listings and calling it work's just like eating chocolate and calling it a diet.
Correct.
So everybody in real estate says the classic "my market is different," and there are some big differences we know between markets around Australia, and there are big differences between, say, city markets and regional markets. And I think the market in which Luxe Listings Sydney is set is probably the eastern suburbs of Sydney, which is like a different planet compared to like everywhere else. You've worked in regional markets and city markets. What do you say to that statement that my market is different?
Correct. I mean, every market is going to be different, but again, there's always at the crux of any real estate transaction, be it a sale or a listing or a property under management, whether it's in the eastern suburbs or at the back of Broken Hill, there's always that common theme of client experience first and putting the client's needs ahead of anything else in that transaction. And I think the guys in Luxe Listings do a really good job of showcasing that on the show. And I think the agent at the back of Broken Hill is going to be able to do that in their day-to-day business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the angle we're going at, I think, for parts of this, apart from obviously the educational angle, is, like I was thinking about this my market's different thing. And I remember from back in the 90s, which you might be too young for, there was this column in a magazine in the UK called Would They Wear It in Wigan, which is a nice bit of alliteration there. But basically in the 90s, there was a whole bunch of runway fashion that was like, exposed breasts and tin foil jackets and big voluminous skirts and things like that, which were probably like a bit much for the straight talking, brisk weather wearing women of Wigan. And that column got really, really, really popular. And what happened then was New Woman in Australia picked it up, but they picked it up with the title, Would They Wear It in Wagga? And, like often they would come up with these weird and wonderful things on the runway. And I feel like, some of the things that we see in Luxe Listings and what we see in Luxe Listings Sydney, like would they do it in Wagga? And, well, happy coincidence, you are from Wagga.
Correct. Wagga represent. Look, I'm really happy about that. It is a happy coincidence. I think that's exactly right. I think taking a view of what these guys do on the show and being able to translate it into how this would work throughout the different markets, whether it's regional or coastal or rural or in the metro areas or in the high-end areas of the capitals of Melbourne or even Canberra now is a really quite a lucrative marketplace with some really beautiful high-end homes and people with big, high net disposable wealth. So I think being able to translate it across the spectrum is a really good opportunity for us.
Yeah, amazing. And now to kick off, so Luxe Listings Season 2, Episode 1, well, Episodes 1, 2 and 3 premiere on April the 1st. So we're going to take a journey back in time to Series 1, and we're going to recap Series 1, and then we're going to bring you all the action from all of the episodes of Season 2. And before we kick off, I'd just like to thank our series sponsor, issue.com, who are an all-in-one platform to create and distribute beautiful digital content, from your listings to your marketing materials to your brochures, your portfolios and more. It's also where you'll find a lot of Elite Agent back issues, so you can check them out at issue.com/eliteagentmag and use the promo code ELITE at the checkout for your free account or 50% off your annual premium account. And it's a fantastic service, so go check it out. Now, Dave, back to Season 1. It had everything from sperm freezing to Miss Australia to birds flying into beamers, Tibetans singing bowls, castles, embassies, fast car, and lots of luxury. And there was even some property.
How about that? A little bit of property as well.
So let's get into Episode 1.
Beautiful. Let's do it. I think Episode 1 really sets the scene very well at the leading three personalities that we're going to follow throughout the series of Luxe Listings. And although the three personalities are vastly different and the way that they operate are very different, and even their outlook on how real estate should be done is quite different, there are some very, very key traits that all of them possess. Some of my favourite bits in that first episode, and we kick off with the Rubinstein group celebrating their first birthday. Gavin comes out full of bravado, talking about how he eats risk for breakfast, and then gives us a running commentary on all of the things that make him amazingly successful, and he is amazingly successful at what he does. And then, as you said, fancy that, we actually get that first glimpse of the property porn side of what Luxe Listings is all about, with the property in Dover Heights, the property that's going to auction. He introduces the show to Simon there, where we meet Simon, the buyer's agent, at a sneak peek, I suppose, before what looks like before the open house inspection, so that Simon can assess it for his client's needs. And at this point, I think we see that juxtaposition between the role of buyer's agent and the role of selling agent, but also the real sense of camaraderie and friendship that obviously these two guys that have known each other for a long time really foster. And that's a nice point in that episode as well. That brings us then to our third star of the series, which is obviously Delene Lewis from Lang & Sims Double Bay. And Delene is there looking to hire a new assistant. She's at some glitzy, glamorous place down near Circular Quay, meeting up with Daniela for the first time. And we see Daniela feature throughout the series quite a bit. And ultimately, we'll talk about her sort of as the series comes to a close. What were some of your takeaways from this first episode, Sam?
Yeah, I think I'll never forget the statement, I eat risk for breakfast. I'd like to say I spread it on my toast, but I kind of don't. Too many carbs for a Luxe lister. And the other one, I think, Simon, I think we were introduced to, like, as you say, the difference between a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, because, you see Simon walk in and it's classic buyer's agent, and I think Nikki called it sort of the duck waddle, this is bad, that's not good, that's too ordinary, this is, so. And then his classic line, which was something like, if it's any higher, we're not the buyer. I think basically every buyer's agent in Australia picked up their pen and wrote that one down, and it's probably been used a million times since. But oh, look, there was so much in that episode to love. I think Amazon really, they opened the series with a bang. I love the dinner at Simon's house, and I think, one of the MVPs of this season and hopefully next season is Simon's mum, Jen. Yeah, she was just such a lovable mum, and love that. And even Simon schwitzing over the her wanting to find him a girlfriend or a wife or something like that. So so I loved all of that. And then obviously we ended with that crescendo of the cruise where there was a bit of non-scripted, of course, conflict between the three of them. But what a great way to open and showcase Sydney.
Yeah, absolutely. And then leaving us on that big cliffhanger. And Amazon have done this really well, where from episode to episode, they've really left us on the cliffhanger, and we're at the auction of this place in Dover Heights. Things are really heating up. Cooley's doing a great job on the gavel, obviously. And then like that, the episode's over. And which brings us into episode 2.
That's it. You can tell it's Damien Cooley by the tie, yeah?
Correct, 100%.
Yeah, so Dover Heights. So we come into the next episode, which is episode 2. And I think the classic line from that one is that it's classic auction. There are a lot of people sort of sitting around sort of tight-lipped, trying not to look at each other. It looks a bit like a scene from The Bold and the Beautiful to me, where everyone's kind of like and sniffing the air and doing all those ones. Until Gavin says in one of his diary moments, I work the auction floor like a stripper at a bucks party. And I thought that's classic Gavin. And only he, I think, because, like we've interviewed Gavin a lot of times, I've got a lot of time for Gavin, only he could get away with that line, I think.
Agreed.
And then there was a bit of a moment in that episode which I didn't love, and that was the bit where, do you remember the 2 girls were bidding, and then there was that snide guy at the side sort of saying, what is Daddy going to buy you a house or something like that, not believing that they had the money. I think, like the advice I'd give agents out there is don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah. Because you just never know. Like there's so many tech billionaires that sort of walk around in, like black polo necks and scruffy jeans that you just don't know who's got the money these days. And I thought it was a bit of a chauvinist comment to make. What about you?
Yeah, correct. And I think Cooley did really well at bringing that back in. And I mean, it's hard to say how much of that was scripted and how much was actually real life, but these things happen in real life and we see them. Tom Penos will show you almost every weekend that he's got his iPhone out at his auctions, that there's always a heckler and he deals with them really well and very directly. And I think any consummate auctioneer has the ability to be able to diffuse those situations quite quickly. Yeah, that old bloke was a bit of a pig, but I think that it is representative of what does happen in real life, whether it was scripted for this episode or not. Things like that do happen. Things get out of control.
Yeah. And then I think the moment that we introduced Delene as our queen, obviously Queen and Delene as rhymes. Yeah. Was that moment that she was talking to Janet, who was the vendor at Blair Athol. And again, this was just a beautiful example of really looking after your vendor, being transparent, taking into account, that the vendor didn't really want to see the house knocked down. And Delene took all of that on board and ended up coming back. Well, she sat down and had tea and did all the things. And, I just thought that was a really lovely way to meet your vendor or your customer where they're at. Yeah. And, and in the end, she got the listing and brought in a beautiful buyer. So that was a really good moment for me in that episode.
Yeah, and that really was a masterclass in building rapport and empathy with the clients and matching them on their level, as you said. And I mean, in the previous episode, we saw Delene absolutely hold her own in the argy-bargy on the boat with Gavin and the TRG group of blokes. And obviously before in that episode, she'd sort of described herself as, or people had described her previously as the Rottweiler in heels. I really like that comment. And she sort of countered that with saying that she certainly wasn't a pooch. I think that's a really nice way to see how Delene operates in terms of being able to tough it out with the boys as needed, but also be that really soft, gentle, sweet, trusted agent and advocate for the vendor when she needs to be. She did. That was a stroke of brilliance.
Yeah, I think, she's definitely a masterclass in, she knew she wasn't going to win, where she just handled herself really well, picked herself back up again and kept moving forward, which I thought was really, really good.
Yeah, agreed.
So on to episode 3. Give me your highlights from episode 3.
Look, I think that the Bondi apartment was probably my favourite bit of this episode. From the real estate point of view, where Gavin and his team sourced out the opportunity, first of all, by scoping out this overpriced listing that had been on the market for a long period of time. That was obviously overpriced and perhaps there was some dud advice that was given by the previous listing agent, who knows, all the way through to the point where Gavin meets the vendor, builds trust, is very, very blunt and honest with the price opinion and what it was going to take to be able to get that sold. And even then, he thought that the listing price was pretty lofty from a price per square metre perspective. And then through to the open house of the year, which had the best vista that Sydney has to offer, right on the sand of Bondi Beach, with live music and expensive champagne flowing, old blokes in budgie smugglers, which was probably the low light of the episode. The lady who probably wasn't a giant, but next to Gavin looked like an absolute behemoth of a woman, whose YSLs wouldn't fit on the stairs as she was going down. I loved it. I loved the Bondi apartment. I thought that, look, even though it seems small, I could definitely see myself perched up there. That's the kind of place that would be worthwhile coming back to Sydney for. And I probably wouldn't come back to Sydney for much. The traffic would do my absolute head in. But if it was for that, I'd probably be back there.
Yeah, well, that's it. I guess it doesn't matter if you're in a small apartment when you're that close to the beach and you can sort of, like you're 5 minutes from the outdoors. And it was still Gavin's kind of listing, even though it wasn't like the big sprawling, cliff house or whatever it was. Gavin sort of seems to be able to pick up these interesting places and then markets the absolute bejesus out of them. So, like who would come up with, and I reckon that guy in the budgies was one of Gavin's mates. But or it could have been one of Kyle Sandilands' mates. Who knows? But thinking about the Aussie burgers and the champagne and like everything is like 5-star, amazing. Like the open home itself is an event, and well, you can tell that was done sort of pre-COVID and stuff like that. But, I do hope that we can sort of get back to showcasing. I mean, maybe you wouldn't do that in Wagga. That's one of the things that you wouldn't do in Wagga. But
we don't have a view like that in Wagga. That's the only problem. We're missing the view.
Yep. But it's very cool the way that Gavin actually looks at open homes in the most great detail. Like I can remember asking him once, what is your point of difference? And he just said one word, detail. Like, and you can see that down to the nth degree, it was all super, super, super planned. Yeah.
Yeah. And even him coming in, I can't remember if it was at this episode, it might have been another open that he was preparing for, but some of the things that he picked up that he wasn't quite happy with before the video shoot or before the open house, and the assistant was scurrying around behind him fixing them. They were minute details, but they were absolute details. And for him, that makes all the difference. And, yeah, that is what sets him apart.
Yeah, absolutely. So this episode was also, Simon went on a date with Miss Universe Australia, I think, and it was sort of kind of a bit of a hilarious episode because he was late for the date because he had to step over some man in the street doing something unspeakable. And then as they were talking, he was taking phone calls from people, and then she was sort of talking to the waiter about being a vegan, and then he orders a medium rare steak, which I didn't think was probably the best move.
He could not give a shit.
I just reckon Jen might have said, Simon, you're never going to get a female doing that sort of stuff. But I also think, I think that's where Nikki and I sort of talked about the episode, and it's like Simon for Bachelor 2022. Yeah, I just think he's a shoo-in. And I can just imagine, like a rose ceremony with, like Osher and Simon, at the end of it, and, ladies, you did not get a rose from Simon, but I've got this whole narrative in my head of, home visits with Jen and everyone schwitzing at the table and, cuddling puppies and, and Simon on the phone and all the rest of it. So, if Channel 10 are listening, I think Simon's your guy next year.
Yeah, I think he is. And look, I think that there's much more than just Jen too. I mean, I think that the potential bachelorettes would have to go through and meet the whole Cohen handler team. He obviously spends more time there than he does anywhere else. The tricky part is going to be finding a bachelorette that is happy with playing second fiddle to CH, I suppose. He lives and breathes his work. And again, that's the cornerstone to his success, and he's wildly successful. He's no doubt the best buyer's agency in the country, and that doesn't come by doing things in halves. So good on him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also liked in this episode, one other thing that just before we move on to episode 4 was the showcasing of Delene in that really vulnerable spot where earlier in the episode we'd seen her meet with Tom, a client of hers. She had a listing. It wasn't selling. She had it open again. No buyers came through. And it's, as an agent, something that we can all relate to. We've all had listings that just for love nor money will not bloody sell. And this place looked like it was fairly niche. It had a few quirks that weren't going to suit everyone. It wasn't an easy job to sell. The vendor was very set on price and wouldn't be told otherwise. And it was sort of building up to, oh, shit, I think Deleen's going to lose this one. And ultimately, when she's having that family time, which she talks about valuing really highly in the episode, she gets the call from Tom, still takes the time to take the call, even though she's in the middle of family time and her dad's birthday. And I think that's just a really class act, the way that she handled that whole scenario. She showed a lot of resilience, first of all, which is obviously a key characteristic in any successful real estate agent's toolkit. But she was very humble in the way that went. There was certainly no burning of bridges. I think a lot of up-and-coming agents can take a lot from that in the way that she conducted herself there.
Yeah, I think so too, because, you know, like you can either keep sort of, knocking yourself out, you know, on a no-win situation, or you can sort of move on because, maybe it's just something that's not clicking between agent and vendor, and, you know, for every vendor there is an agent. It just might not be you.
Correct, absolutely. Another thing that I really liked about the whole series was just how open the three main characters were with access to their families. The fact that we were in Deleen's house with her parents and her sister and the two girls, the fact that we were in Simon's house for Shabbat with his mum and dad, and obviously Liam and Tammy as well. And then later on, we'll talk about it in a tick, because I think it's the next episode where we get to meet Gav's dad, and he takes the time to go with him. It's big of them, I think. I think that they've got such high-profile public lives as elite agents that they certainly don't need to invite the cameras into their homes. And the fact that they have, I think, has really added to the authenticity of the whole series. So good on them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So episode 4, if you don't like rejection, get out of real estate. I feel like every coach has sort of, said that at one point or another. Yeah. So this is where a few things happened. Well, first of all, Jen got a puppy, which was, who doesn't love a puppy?
Absolutely no hate off Simon bearing grandchildren. I think it was a really dud move for Simon to think that was going to have any impact. Jen is still desperate for the grandchildren, but it made no difference.
I reckon she is too. Simon was forced to cross the bridge to Mossman because, obviously the Luxe listings in Sydney aren't all about the east side. Some of them
How dreadful having to go over to the north. Jeez.
I know, right? There's a rumour, Dave, that the north side is going to be featured a bit more in season 2. So there's going to be a bit more traversing of the Harbour Bridge, as I understand. So we're leading up to the crescendo here. Obviously, we're over the hump in season 3, and then we're leading up to the crescendo where, Gavin and Shani have a bit of a fallout over a broken mouse, and that sort of leads up to, sort of an interesting scenario. But I think, this is, and you see it a lot in real estate businesses, as people working with friends and family. Do you have any advice on that?
Look, we think very long and hard about it. I've employed friends previously who were probably employed because they were a friend and not because they may have been the best person for the job. And it doesn't always work well. I think in this case with Shani and Gavin, it's quite obvious that friendship comes before that employer-employee relationship, and because of the way that Gavin operates at such a tempo and such a driven, focused way of doing things, he just needs this shit done. And because Shani and he are friends, Shani thinks, well, this is really trivial stuff, plug your own frigging mouse in. He needs someone that will plug the mouse in for him without the back chat, and perhaps Shani's not the right person for it. I don't know. She seems lovely. I really liked her on the show. I think she would bring a lot of value into that business, but maybe not that business. Maybe someone else's real estate business that she's not childhood friends with. Yeah, I think it's tainted with danger.
Yeah, I do think, because we had the whole of TRG on the cover in 2020, I think, actually, now that I think about it. And I interviewed all of them at that time, because obviously the team has grown substantially since then. And they're all very driven people. It's very obvious to me that Gavin recruits for a certain culture. And I think it's fine to sort of, bring someone in at the bottom, but then, make sure that there is a path up for them, when they're ready, because I don't think Gavin, sort of recruits people that, are happy to just plod along and stay where they are.
Yeah.
And, even Shanice, she's a qualified lawyer, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's, obviously probably has ambitions of her own as well. So, be interesting to see where she goes in season 2.
Yeah, if she's got much of a role to play in season 2. And speaking about support staff in season 2, someone who I'm surprised we haven't talked about up until now is probably the real star of the show, in my opinion. I love him. Is young Liam, Simon's offsider Liam, because he's an absolute card. He's hilarious. He is so naive and dumb's not the right word, but he's just such a boy, such a young boy learning the ropes. But you can't help but love him because he's friggin' hilarious. He's a funny addition. I love him. He's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, no, that you mentioned it. Poor old Liam got locked in the car, and we came up with that hashtag Free Liam at the same time that, Free Britney was pissed. I think they were just going to an open house, and poor old Liam got sidelined. But, I thought he was a really good sidekick for Simon in terms of, getting him his juices. And, well, he was the one that was responsible for that fabulous party in episode 6. That's an amazing talent. And then I think even in episode 5, he showed that he was like truly Simon's, like a chip off the old block almost, when he sort of started, doing the waddle around the house going, no, this needs fixing. That's ordinary. That's, it was like a proud moment. But speaking of Simon's offsiders, one of my favourites in the show is actually Tammy. She's got the softness when she needs to be soft, and she's got the sass when she needs to be sassy. And in the very beginning, way back in season 2, she gave Simon a bit of heat when, she said, well, this is a kitchen, Simon. Some people cook in it, which I thought was like, boom, well done. Yeah. But, obviously there would have been a lot of people in the industry that would recognise Tammy's talents from watching the show, including our Queen Deline, who tried to recruit Tammy in episode 4. Now, that actually goes on a lot in the real estate industry, doesn't it? That's pretty normal.
Yeah, 100%, because good talent is hard to find. And if you can find someone that has those, and it's not the skill stuff you can teach, the technical stuff you can learn on the job. It's the attitude and the tenacity and the resilience and all of these buzzwords that make a good real estate practitioner, whether that be a sales agent in their own right or a sales associate or an offside or an administrator. Good talent is hard to find. So there's a lot. I mean, it's probably the same in a lot of industries, but it would be not real estate if there wasn't someone moving from one agency to another in certain marketplaces constantly.
Yeah, it's something we find a lot in, in Elite Agent. We'll get a press release saying, oh, so-and-so started at such and such a place, but then, for the uninitiated, it's always, all right, well, where did they come from? There's always an opposite side to this story, or, when one office closes under one brand, it opens up under another. And, sometimes you just got to read between the lines a bit, in the industry in that way.
Yeah, that's right. The other thing I like about this episode is the introduction of Michael Pallier. Michael Pallier is a really renowned agent in the eastern suburbs who's been around for a long, long time, working for the Sotheby's brand or operating the Sotheby's brand in the eastern suburbs now. He is the MVP of this episode. And Simon himself says in the episode, Michael Pallier is one of the nicest people that you'll ever meet in real estate. And that really rings true through this episode. He's featured again in another episode where we see the castle, which we'll talk about in a tick. And I think that if he wasn't such the dorky dad, he'd probably be a front runner to be one of the main players in something like Luxe Listings. But he's just such the dorky dad, like he's dad jokes galore, and he's just a bit of a nervous man. Anyway, I love him. I think he's fantastic. And the results that he has achieved throughout his career speak absolute volumes. But, yeah, I'm really happy that we saw someone like Michael Pallier showcased in a couple of the episodes in this season.
He is gorgeous, and we interviewed him just after season 1 finished airing. And I can remember, I mentioned Luxe Listings, and he said, "Oh yeah, some people recognise me walking down the street," yeah. and he seemed quite surprised about it, like that people, like you're in that show, and yep, I was in that show, like, and seemed genuinely surprised about it, which was kind of lovely. So, and this episode then ends on Gavin selling the Bondi apartment for a record. For $3 million. So I think, I think that's the results to sort of back up those claims that, that he made and all the scripts and dialogues. So, I think that proves that you can use the scripts and dialogues so long as you can back it up with the result and the chops to actually execute.
100% right. And the other thing that we see in this episode at the end is that it leaves us on another auction cliffhanger with Michael Pallier's Seaview house or Harbourview house, which Simon's got a buyer at, and a little bit unorthodox in having the buyer there at the auction with him. I don't think that that's something that would usually happen in a buyer's agency situation. I think he mentions in the episode that it is a little unusual. The buyer is nervous. God, she's nervous throughout that whole auction, and she's talking to Simon. I'm thinking, just shut up, don't say anything, just let him do his thing, trust that he's got this thing. Yeah, that's right. But there was absolutely ferocious competition, and their pre-auction offer of $13 million, Pallier was talking about it being somewhere in the range of 15 or 16 million, and absolutely blown out of the water, and sells in excess of 24 million. And there were just some bidders there that just didn't want to miss out. And I think it was a real masterstroke from the eventual buyer, the Asian lady who ended up being the buyer, came in very late and she just picked everyone at the post, and she obviously had the cash and didn't want to miss out. So good luck to them.
Yeah, I remember thinking it was a bit like running the Melbourne Cup, that auction, because, again, it started slow, and it's sort of like the Melbourne Cup race where it's like all the horses are sort of bunched in together, and then all of a sudden, like somebody comes from nowhere and like you've all done your tickets. But I think the MVP, before we leave that one and sort of go on to episode 5, is the MVP of that episode was Simon's eyebrows. Because he proved, like in that auction, not only did he have like nerves of steel, but like he had all of the looks, and he was just reading the room like
everyone. That's right. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, episode 5.
Beautiful. I think that from a practical point of view, that whole judging a book by its cover again comes back up in this episode, because the buyer Sue there talking about if some idiot wants to overpay for it, then I'm happy to miss out. She desperately wanted that house and she was disappointed that she didn't get it. But I think that she had real resolve to see that it just wasn't hers for the taking in the end. The other thing that we see here is the Shani and Gav situation escalating, not escalating, but coming to a point where it's probably a little bristly, and towards the end of the episode they then have the chat. Can we go for the chat down on the beach at Avalon, which was a nice scene for it, but it was a bit awkward. I don't know, and I don't think she really agreed with the things that he was saying either. And again, my favourite, Liam comes really into his own here, and it's the battle of the assistants with Delene's assistant Daniela and Simon's assistant Liam, sort of cutting their teeth, if you like, under the watchful eye of their mentors, but giving themselves a bit of a run for their money, I suppose, in a bit of a mock situation where Daniela's probably doing a little too much to sell the property, and she's a little flouncy.
I think the magical trees was the thing that got me, because you could almost see Delene going like.
Yeah. And then Liam, as you said before, duck waddling his way through, absolutely pulling the place to shreds, and finally just saying, yeah, look, it's a knockdown. Straight out into his mouth. That's something that Simon would have said, and probably an absolute moment of pride for Simon, I would think, that Liam had actually cottoned on to that completely. The other thing I liked in this episode was the new buyer that we met, Simon's new buyer, Tamara, with the thick Eastern European accent. Yeah, look, she was crazy. She was a nut job. How did you find Tamara?
Oh, Tamara, she was the one that there wasn't enough gold or something, and she was just going grey, 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 drab, drab, yeah, like, and that, I think Claudia Michaels from McGrath over on the North Shore guessed it in that one, and she was in this beautiful red dress, and I think, I think that that buyer, I think she liked Claudia's dress more than she liked the house.
Yeah, I think Claudia's but the buyer, like, she was so off on a tangent on everything that it was a real mismatch, I think. And the fact that she couldn't find the front door and she was yelling out like a lunatic down on the harbour out to Simon to try and find where he was. I thought she was funny. We see her in the next episode, and I actually warmed to her a bit more. But I just thought, who's this absolute nutbag?
Well, it is in her defence. I think it was Tamara. Yeah, Tamara was the buyer. In her defence, like, I used to walk down that, that's Cremorne Wharf, and Mark and I used to go walking there. And the houses are sort of perched so high up, and they are really like the road to get into them. Really, you kind of need a compass and a set square to try and work out where the actual entrance to the house was. But I suppose, like, if you're the listing agent, and you've got a buyer that's got, that sort of cash, you probably want to meet them somewhere where it's, like, where they're able to, because also, like, the stairs on those properties, like, you have to be fit to actually get up those stairs. Like, people do those stairs to prepare for triathlons. So I did feel a bit sorry for Tamara in that episode.
The other technical lesson I liked out of this episode, going back to the Liam and Daniela thing, was seeing Delane out on the rake. She, again, is just that absolute example of not being too good to do anything. She kicks off the heels, gets on the rake, makes sure that everything's presentable before Simon and Liam get there to show the property. I think that's a true... I sound like a real raving Delane fan, and I'm no more Delane fan than anyone else, but I just like the fact that there's these lessons that up-and-coming agents or agents in general can take, that you're never too good to rake the leaves.
Yeah, she is the queen. Delane is the queen. All right, so let's talk at the final episode. So this is where everything kind of comes together, but we are actually left. We thought loose ends were going to be tied up, but then they left us with a whole bunch of cliffhangers, which obviously they were planning season 2, because if you're going to leave us with cliffhangers, it's like Dynasty. You've got to expect that they're going to be resolved. Yeah. So episode 6, which is the last episode in the season, comes with a heap of cliffhangers. So we know that we're going to get a season 2. But I think, interestingly, so Tamara didn't like the house in Mossman because it was too grey. So Simon thinks, I know, I'm going to get this woman a castle, and calls his mate Michael Pallier, obviously. And, we're taken back to, I think, Northbridge to Innisfail Castle, I think it is, which, by the way, is still on the market. It still hasn't been sold. But, like, beautiful thing. I thought Carson from Downton Abbey would probably, open the door and offer us tea. But she's brought this mate of hers who is even weirder than her, with the Tibetan singing bowl. Yeah. Is she, what she got in the bowl? Is the energy any good? And then I think they all go down to the dungeon, and then I think Liam gets a bit worried that he's going to get locked in there too. So I don't know. What did you think of that house?
Yeah, look, I mean, the house was incredible. The whole heritage overlay, I think, is the biggest problem in that there's very little you can do with it. And as much as it's a beautiful castle on the outside, it's pretty run down on the inside, and it would take a lot of work and a lot of money to do something like that up. Pallier offers the solution, I suppose, in that there's DA-approved plans for a really ultra-modern extension or wing of this place. Look, for me, that the juxtaposition of the old and new there just wouldn't work. I didn't think that the plans looked that great. Obviously, as you said, the place is still on the market now online, so Tamara's obviously not the buyer, even though her friend said that the energy in most of the place was quite good. Again, from a practical point of view, these things happen. In my career, we've had plenty of opportunities or plenty of instances where people have come with their healer friend to make sure that the energy in the house was on point. We've had people wanting early access to smudge the place with burning sage. I've had a couple of Asian buyers that have come through with experts in feng shui. So I think, it's odd. It's something that I don't really get, and a lot of people probably don't get, but I think that it's something that's not all that uncommon these days.
Yeah, well, it's again, I think you've got to meet the vendor or the buyer where they're at, and let them do what they've got to do, and correct. Let them walk away with a good experience, because all buyers are future sellers, right?
Yeah, correct, absolutely.
Interestingly, in this episode as well, I can remember, interviewing someone a while ago about personal brands, and actually his name was Herman Chan. He was an agent in San Francisco, and he was a very out there character, and he said not everyone is going to want to be my customer. But the people that I want to be my customers will be attracted to my brand. And I thought we really saw this play out between Kai and Oliver Lavers, who are both, elite agents within Gavin's team, when Gavin set them a challenge to say, all right, whoever finds the buyer for this one's going to get an extra $50K. So interesting that he's sort of, ignited the competitive spirit between the two of them. Mm-hmm. But, I can remember Kai's style as being let's get on with the deal and giddy up, buy it now. And then, then you had Oliver, who was quite soft with the family and talking to the kids and playing with, and it's just really interesting to see, I think as an agent, you've really got to play into who you are, because it can work for you, with different vendors and different buyers. Yeah,
correct. And I think it would be really interesting to see, if the tables were turned, how Kai would have dealt with the mother and the kids, and how Ollie would have dealt with the straight shooting bloke, because I think that inherently Kai seems to be that straight shooter, that go, that get the deal done kind of guy, where Ollie seems to be that softer approach. So it'd be interesting to see just how much they can turn that around to suit the buyers and the sellers that they're dealing with. And look, I mean, they're absolute guns in their own right, so obviously they've got that down pat. But I think that was an interesting take on the differences between skill set, attitude, the way that they conduct themselves. Daniela, Delene's assistant, it comes to the crunch for them to have their one-on-one meeting at the end of the probation period to decide whether Daniela stays or Daniela goes. And whilst Delene points out that there's definitely some areas for improvement for her, and I think she does that in a really nice, respectful, constructive manner. Ultimately, Daniela's given the job, but it looks like she's not still there. We've done a little bit of searching, and her LinkedIn profile would suggest that she's back down in Wollongong, where I think she originates from. So perhaps Sydney just wasn't to her liking. I'm sure Gavin Rubinstein would say that another one bites the dust. He's had a bit of a dig at Delene throughout the series about how many staff and assistants that she may have gone throughout her long career. But yeah, it looks like Daniela's not there. And speaking of the superstars that aren't there anymore, it also looks like our friend Liam is no longer there. I know. He's, his Instagram said something about pursuing other opportunities, so he won't be in season 2. But there was some hints, I think somebody did a story, I don't know whether it's Daily Mail, that he might be showing up on TV somewhere else. Mm. Because, again, I think if you can pull off a party with, everything from swans to waiters in pink budgie smugglers to pink penis straws to, all of the things that he did, when I come back in the next life, I want Liam organising my hands party, basically. It was amazing. But yeah, so then I guess the crescendo of the episode is the boat party, where we find out who's won the money. Yeah, and nice guys boat finished last.
Yeah, from Gavin's team. And Gavin is talking about considering whether or not to expand his business, and the phone rings. And in probably what was a bit of a brain fade moment, quick, hurry, wrap up filming because, COVID, we're all going to be locked down soon. Yeah. Gavin says it's Ray White, the big boss. But we know that it couldn't have been Ray White, right? Because Ray White,
he's a couple of generations ago, I think, isn't he?
He's a couple of generations ago, yeah. So, and I did, so I thought, all right, well, who is it? Is it Brian? Is it Dan? Yeah. Is it Kyle Sandilands saying, hurry up? Can you guys please wrap it up, because we're about to get shut down? Or, what was it? Who do you think it was?
I think it was probably Brian. I think we see a very quick snippet. I don't know if it's at the end of that season, whether they had a bit of a sneak peek of what was to come, or certainly in some of the trailers that have come out since, where it looks like a beautiful green lawn, probably somewhere on Wolseley Road in Point Piper, I would think, on the harbour. And it's Gavin and Brian sitting down. There may have been a third person, maybe it was Dan as well. But I think, I think when Gav says that Ray White is calling, the Ray White, I think it's the Ray White. It'd be interesting to see how that kicks off season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So the castle. So here's what we know about season 2 so far. So the cliffhangers. We had Dan White on the podcast recently, and I said, who was it? He was kind of being tight-lipped and just said, well, it could have been anyone really. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the White family show up in some shape or form. The castle is still not sold. I think Simon's still unattached as far as I can tell. I've stalked his Instagram. But I still think we should mount that Batchy 2023 campaign, because I just do think that he and Osher would look really great together. And then the other big cliffhanger was Tammy was, trying to weigh up whether she would stay. Should she stay or should she go? Should she stay with Simon or join Queen Deline? What are your thoughts?
I don't think she'll leave. I think that she's really found her groove with Simon. I think that they, from what we see on the show, they work really well together. I think Tammy is Simon's Donna from Suits, and I think that he would be really at a loss without her. And I think also she is such an ingrained family member of the Cohen handler business that I don't think that there'd be enough of an attraction to go. Also switching from being a buyer's agent or a buyer's agent's associate into a selling agent's role or a selling agent's associate, although there's some common themes, it's quite a different position to hold. So I think she'll stay. My money's on stay.
Yeah, this sounds like Married at First Sight, doesn't it? My money's on stay as well, because she's still on the Cohen Handler website.
Well, there we go.
The thing with the news in real estate is it's really easy. You can Google them and they're everywhere. So the other thing too that I hope they pick up in season 2 is the commercial venture, Costi Cohen. So I thought that was that was pretty interesting. And of course, I think with Costi Cohen, like Taz Costi is actually linked to Shani. I think they're engaged now. So, this is the last of the Instagram stalkers I am, but
it's funny how incestuous the industry is and how very few degrees of separation there is between anyone and anyone within the industry, particularly in Sydney and particularly in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I think we also, and we'll talk about what we can expect from season 2 in a tick, but there's also a link between Simon and the newest member of the main cast, who is the absolutely fabulous Monika too.
Yeah.
With Tim Zhu, it's Tim, isn't it? The boxer. His mum was an agent for Black Diamonds for a number of years and is now a buyer's agent associate with Simon. So there's links everywhere. I mean, and that is typical of real estate in Australia.
So there's a lesson there too, actually, that you just got to keep it tidy and keep it dignified and everything, like no matter where you go, and sort of try and remain on good terms with everybody that you meet.
100%.
So we've seen the trailer for season 2. What do you reckon is coming up based on the trailer? There's a lot of rap music again.
Yeah, look, it's a rap lover's paradise, Luxe Listings season 1, and I think season 2 is probably going to be no different. I quite like it. It's quite good. I'm really excited to see what Monika brings to the show. I think that she is a real rags to riches story, and I love her story. I've seen her speak. I've never met her personally, but she seems hilarious. outside of the professional persona that she has. So I'm really excited to see what Monika brings. I think it's going to add that extra layer. And you mentioned before that there's rumours that we see a bit more over the bridge action in season 2. And that doesn't surprise me at all, because Monika's working with sort of the elite of Chinese investors in Australia. And a lot of them are in those upper North Shore suburbs, even out to the inner west. I know that she sells a lot out there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic changes a little with Monika being brought in. Does Queen Deline feel some threat there? She's still Queen Deline in my eyes, but she's no longer the sole princess. Yeah, let's see how they handle that.
Yeah, well, I love Monika too. I'm a big Monika. You can't have too much Monika too, I reckon. We've met her a few times, and she reminds me a bit of a Lucy Liu. You know, she's just like this superhero that sort of walks in all furs and hair and stilettos. And I can remember meeting her at ARIC a couple of years ago, just before we interviewed her, and she was wearing these amazing shoes. I think they were Louboutins with the spiky things on them. And I said, "Oh, Monika, I love your shoes." And she said, I said that the spikes are amazing. And she said, yes, they're really good for kicking butts. So, and there's plenty of butts to kick, I reckon, in the eastern suburbs. So I can't wait to see what she does.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other telltale that Tammy and Simon are still working together is that I think we've seen a little bit of a snippet, a very quick snippet. You've got to be a little bit eagle-eyed, but them together, working together in the next season. So I'm happy to see that. And Australia's golden girl, the Delta Goodrum, perhaps a buyer's agent client of Simon's, it seems.
Well, I can't wait to see, because I'm a fan of Delta. Like, you know, I don't care what anyone says about her. I love her. Oh. And yeah, it was like lovely to see her show up. And I think, you know, the snippet I saw was, you know, she was taller than Simon too. So she must be very, very tall in real life. But I can't wait to see whether it's, you know, it could be a performance on a boat. Who knows? But yeah, who knows? Anyway.
Can't wait to find out. This is the main thing.
I know, and thankfully we don't have long to wait. Okay, folks, well, that's a wrap on season 1. Dave, thank you so much for taking that journey back through Luxe Listings. I mean, I certainly enjoyed the series, and I know you did too, and I actually had heaps of fun reliving it just now.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me. So
Luxe Listings season 2 drops on Friday, the 1st of April. You're going to get 3 episodes at once. That's 1, 2, and 3. And Dave and I will be back on Saturday to give you our thoughts and takeaways and things like that on those episodes. And then we'll see you again once a week on a Saturday with the same things. And we can't wait to talk about all things Luxe. Dave, thank you once again. Big love and thanks to issue.com for sponsoring the series. And we will see you all again soon.